So, welcome back to the channel, everybody. It's been 7 nights that I've now used this tent, so what I thought I would do is give you an update on just exactly how I feel about it and what it's like to have used it over that time with real life experience, real world experience, both on the hill and on lowland camps. So I'll take you through some of the good points and the bad points as I've found it, having used this properly now. So let's start with one of the positives, and that is the size of it. It's actually very compact when you look at this. This fits in a pack absolutely no problem. You could take out the poles and put them down the outside of your pack if you wanted and scrunch this up even more. But I find actually at this size I can just pop it in the pack and forget it. That's using a 45 litre pack. So yeah, it does pack really small and compact, which I like. So at 1.8ish kilos all in, including pegs and everything you need, I'd say this is a pretty practical one-person tent. So that's not a ridiculous weight to carry on its own. But also as a two-person tent, and it is genuinely big enough, 1.8 split between you, 900 grams, split the poles, split the inner, whatever. That makes it really viable as well. So yeah, I like both the size and I like both the weight on it as well. There's a couple of mods you should probably do with the tent initially. The inner is not actually connected to the outer normally, but if you take the existing elastics, feed them through the fly sheet loop, and then put a knot in it, a loop in it in its own right that you can still remove if you need to dry out the inner. That then permanently connects the inner to the outer and makes it a far quicker pitch, especially in the rain. As you'll see in one of my videos, I had to pitch in pouring rain, and the fact that I could do this so quickly as one, it's really quick to pitch. All in one when it's already connected, so that's really fast in wet weather. There's also very few guy lines on it. You've got 4 guys running off it, and then basically just your corners and your doors. That it also pitches very taut, and that seems to have remained the case in every night that I've used it, whether it's been wet, dry, windy, whatever. Maybe just the odd wee adjustment, but because it's sill and poly on the inside, there's less stretch than a full sill nylon fly sheet. One of the things I don't like about it is the thickness of the zip cover. It's just a wee bit thin, and what it tends to do is snag now and again, especially at the bottom, so you can catch the zip teeth in the actual flap. It would be nice to see them just strengthen that up. It's just a wee niggle, but it's one of those things you notice as you go in and out regularly. So yeah, Vango, change that and thicken that up, and that would be a lot nicer. The inner tie backs, I'd like to have seen them in elastic. I said that in my original video. And it's turned out to be true. The inner tie backs would be better as elastic. It will hold. They haven't actually released on me, but just having that extra tension of elastic just allows you to pull this a wee bit tauter above your head when you're cooking or getting in and out. Okay, another negative point about the inner, or about the tent in general, is you need to tension up at least 3 of the bungees. I've already done it, and this will create a more taut inner generally. But the other point for doing it at this end and at the other end is that as you put heavy things in the pockets here, the inner tends to sag slightly and fall down. So to maximise your headroom, especially for 2 of you, make sure that you tension the inner bungee to the fly sheet up here, just to take about 1 inch out of it. Yeah, so above my head, the central one here particularly, if you tension that as well and bring it up, you've still got tons of room between the fly sheet and the inner, but it just creates a wee bit extra headroom, lifts the whole inner up, and it's just a wee bit tauter. Right, another major plus point about this tent is the width, 130 centimetres wide, which means you can get 2 decent mats in, but more importantly, you've just got more room to sleep, even head to head. Quite unusual in what they say is a 2-person tent to have that kind of width. There's only a few models seem to do it. A lot of them are sub 130 centimetres. So that to me is a big plus point, especially if you're going to use it with 2 people. It will genuinely accommodate them. So here's one negative, the tension band system. There's absolutely no pockets to stow it. I'm not sure if it's just this model I've got, because I've seen some slight variations on it in other people's tents. And it's maybe expecting a bit too much. It's a £240 tent. So we're talking low to mid market here in terms of cost. But the construction on it, although sound enough, if you just look at the QC and the finish, you get little loose edges, the stitching is a wee bit awry or a bit unfinished here and there. Structurally, I don't think it really affects it, but you'll just notice the difference if you're used to something like a Nord tent or a Hilleberg tent. So I know some people have reservations about the vestibules in this. They are quite narrow, they're quite compact, whereas you gain in the inner tent width. However, if you need to cook, and I have done it, I actually did it at the top of the hill a couple of weeks back, you can detach the inner here and pull it back to extend out your vestibule and cook. It's either fixed here at the moment, or it has to be manually pulled out the way, and then you have to put maybe a peg or whatever you've got handy when you're cooking. So again, one of the mods that would be really nice to see in the future is actually a slider on this. Again, a plus point with this one, it is very stable in the wind. I've now tested it in quite a variety of conditions. On Barra, we were there for a few days and we got some pretty strong winds. Interestingly enough, they were side on eventually rather than end on. End on, I think this is extremely good in the wind. Very low profile, but very strong end pieces. So there's no sign of it flexing in. On the sides, I ended up having to use the TBS or the TXS system. But again, it just solidified up the hoop, and the hoop hardly moved, maybe about an inch at the peak in the highest gusts. I'm not saying it was hugely, I mean, I wouldn't say they were gale force winds, they were probably 20 to 30 mile an hour, but enough side on to see how the tent performed. And actually it performed really well. A minor deformation of the vestibule, just pushing in slightly, but not majorly, and it didn't encroach on the inner tent at all. So yeah, the upside of this low profile tent is it's very good in wind. So if you're looking for something stable in more rough conditions, I'd certainly recommend it. The trade-off with this low profile tent is the inner height, and that's probably going to be the biggest buying decision for a lot of people. I actually, strangely enough, I've had a few low profile tents, and some of them do annoy me. They get, you know, just my headroom really annoys me. For whatever reason in this one, it's maybe the extra width. It actually hasn't, I mean, I'm not sitting on a mat at the moment, but it hasn't actually annoyed me at all. And I think it's to do with just the extra general room inside when you're solo. I think when you're two up, it might be a wee bit more of a struggle to get changed. But solo, it's not really bothered me, the height in here at all, despite the fact your head's rubbed slightly. Not so much at the high point, but where you're cooking at the edges. So yeah, it's both a plus point from a performance point of view in the weather, and a negative from a usability point of view if you're a taller user. So in summary, after 7 nights use, I'm really impressed. I think it's a bit like a Volkswagen Golf. It's the tent equivalent. It's a great all-rounder. It's not that expensive. It does exactly what it says on the tin, gives you sufficient space for two, is weather stable, watertight, cheap to buy at £240, well enough made with good hydrostatic heads, and the materials are all sound. The inner's quite thin, but I don't mind that at all. But it works well, it blocks out the wind, and it's also, the other thing to say is I've had minimal condensation. One very still night on my 7th night when it went absolutely dead quiet and pretty damn cold, close to freezing. There was a lot of water on the inside of it, but no problems at all in the inner. I hope this helps you work out whether it maybe is the tent for you, but I actually have to say I do rate it. It's extremely good for the money. A lot of space, a lot of stability, good pack size, nice and light. I probably said this in the initial videos, but it's actually turned out to be very true. Build quality, maybe not the best, but I've not seen anything burst. I'm not seeing anything that's likely to burst at the moment. And you just need to tweak things. You take 15 minutes to tweak it before you go out. So just to explain, I've used it in a mixture of conditions. I've had it on the hill, I've had it in driving rain, I've had it in strong winds, I've had it in no wind and near cold conditions, near freezing conditions. So it's been a good mix. Some of those have been coastal and some of these have been at height. But yeah, I recommend it, I have to say. If you get any questions, drop me a line. It's probably hard to see one of these things. A lot of them, there's not a lot of them around at the moment, so you kind of have to buy it and then check it and see if it's for you. But if you don't mind the low profile of it, it's a great solo tent, and it's also a very comfortable, a relatively comfortable two-person tent at 1.8ish kilos. That's pretty damn good. So I'll continue to use this over the summer period and decide whether it's a keeper. But 7 nights so far is more than I get in a lot of tents, and it has worked very well. Thanks for watching. I'll hopefully see you at the weekend when I get out for another wee adventure. Thanks again. Cheers.